Okay, welcome to Plan 9 Crunch. I'm Doug Gibson, and we have two Kevins tonight. We have Kevin Walter, okay, and we have Kevin Sean Michaels. And Kevin Walters has directed a film called Tower Rats, and Kevin Sean Michaels has directed two films. Now, you may have directed more, but I'm telling you, he had Vampira the movie and The Wild World of Ted B. Michaels. And what we're going to talk about first is, I know, Kevin Walters, that you are involved in preparing a work on Ed Wood, right? That is correct?
Correct.
And I've noticed, I actually watched a podcast with you talking to Mr. Bowl, the director. Okay, and I found that very interesting. And you mentioned that you talked with Bob Kramer, who is a biographer, and we're all waiting for his updated biography of Bela Lugosi to come out, because it's going to have a lot of Ed Wood stuff, isn't it? So both of you can chime in, Kevin Sean, also, but tell me what the Ed Wood project is looking like, all right, that you're working on.
So I would say originally it started out as a homage film to everything Ed Wood. And kind of while going on this journey, I became extremely obsessed with learning about Ed Wood. Now, kind of like you gentlemen, I grew up knowing Ed Wood, his films, you know, how they were made fun of on Mystery Science Theater and things like that. And so while making this homage film, kind of an art house biopic, I guess, about all things Ed Wood, I just became incredibly obsessed with learning more about him, and also that you know, people who know about Ed Wood, and also those who are also still alive that might have talked to or interacted with people in Ed Wood's world or knew him, that you know, there's documentaries out there on Ed Wood, but there wasn't like too much. So I just also became incredibly inspired, I guess, like Ed Wood, to also find out things about him maybe that we don't already know, you know, and that's why God bless Bob Blackburn and his Facebook group.
Yes, Ed Wood Jr., by the way.
Because there's just so much knowledge and new things coming out about Ed Wood Jr. that I guess that rant made sense about the project here. So it's a part original film, and then also it's kind of a part documentary.
Great. You know, the reason I said Ed Wood Jr. was there are different Facebook groups on Ed Wood, and I love them all, but the best one is Ed Wood Jr. What's interesting is, in Ed Wood, both of you, there are so many things you can keep discovering. And there are so many things that you're starting to find out, because I love Gray's book. It's fantastic, Nightmare of Ecstasy. I have my copy too, thank heavens. And I keep saying there's going to be an updated one, but I haven't seen it yet. So, but we're getting books by Bob Blackburn. We're getting books by Angel Scott. We're getting books, we're getting these books that are starting to give us little tantalizing pieces of his life, domestic life, and life in the 50s and 60s. But it seems like there's still a lot of stuff to uncover. And we've had books about his service, you know, in the Army, no, was it the Marines, I believe, that has given more clarification and stuff like that. But there is a lot of stuff to get out there. What are some of the things you're trying to find out?
Great question, because I would say in 2028, it'll be like 50 years since Ed Wood's passing, and we're still talking about him. And there probably must be a reason why to all that, right?
Definitely.
And yeah, on this journey, you know, Mr. Kevin Michaels as my producer there, but yeah, and so I'll let him kind of talk on this too. So yeah, on this journey, you know, I've interviewed and talked to Bob Blackburn, Bob Kramer, Paul Apel, who wrote the book, and you've interviewed.
Yeah.
And then also, I feel bad butchering his name, and I wish I had his book right next to me, James Pontalino
or something?
Yeah, yeah, his book and research is very, very interesting, kind of about the truth behind Ed Wood Jr.'s military, because I feel like that will tie into when I rant about talking to Bob Creamer. Sheesh. Let's see, who else do I talk to? I feel bad not writing it down right now.
You don't have to. They're not going to hurt their feelings.
Okay. Well, let me just ask. Oh, go on. I'm sorry. Go on.
No, go ahead.
Well, Kevin Michaels, are you producing this?
Yes, I'm one of the producers on this project. Thank God for Kevin Walter here. You know, got me out of the old folks' home to come on to this project, and I appreciate that.
Well, you mentioned to me earlier before the podcast that you were going to go to Ed Wood's house, and Kevin wanted you to go there, right? Boyhood home.
Yes, we call it Poughkeepsie.
Poughkeepsie.
Yes, and I've heard some great things about it. I've heard a lot about what they've done as far as the restoration, and just acknowledging that Ed came from that place. That's great in itself. Just to make it sort of a feature of the city, because what else is the city known for?
Well, Angel Scott's book gave a lot of details on his life there. Now, some people may think that a spiritual biography of Ed Wood is different, but she did give tremendous amounts of information I didn't know about his life in Poughkeepsie. I think was very interesting. So, like you said, there's a lot of stuff waiting to be dug out there, right? That we can find out about Ed Wood.
Oh, for sure. There's a lot more to be dug out. I mean, if I was to do my rant, I would just talk about he was not a buffoon like it's sort of portrayed in the movie. Mm-hmm. That's sort of like to make fun of independent filmmakers in a sense and lump them all together. I mean, here was a person that was using studios, SAG rates. It was a SAG Python was a SAG project. He was getting his films out there legitimately with real distributors. I mean, but again, it's the same thing, the DIY thing, just to imply that everything had to be done badly. And I don't see it that way. I think Ed Wood was trying his hardest to replicate mainstream Hollywood movies. He just didn't have the budgets or the actors, and he was just, if he could have put in any actor he wanted, I'm sure he could have picked A-list actors, but he didn't have the bandwidth to do so.
In the 50s, he had a lot of friendships that helped him, though, particularly, but they were older actors, but from the cowboy movies and things like that. And let's talk about Vampira a little bit, because I watched your movie, and I was very impressed the second time I saw it by the interviews with Vampira. She's so candid, and eccentrically candid, but what I would define her is unfeigned bohemia. This was a woman who lived on her own terms in a bohemian lifestyle, and eccentric as heck. But I think she was a survivor. Would you agree with that?
I think for sure, I would agree with that completely. And she laid out her life, as she saw it. You know what I mean? That's what a lot of people did in Hollywood history, which was to create a legend and to inspire people to do the same, to live in that fantasy space. Because she had so many influences that coming up, and she did not want to be herself, and she was part of that bohemia, for sure. Absolutely, that Beat Generation.
Yeah, I watch her.
Was there.
She's a poet in one of those movies. Is it Beat Generation it's called, or is it the Beatniks? I can't remember.
Yeah, Beat Generation.
Yeah, and I'm thinking.
Yeah,
and I'm watching her do it. I was watching some movies trying to prepare for this. Also watched some Ed Wood films. But you can say it's dated now, but you can see the mannerisms, the way she does it, that was the way things might have been back then, right? And everything.
Oh, sure. There were those coffee houses, and people were snapping instead of clapping and playing bongos, of course.
It reminds me also of that movie about the guy who this is not Ed Wood related, it's Roger Corman, who tries to become a sculptor.
Bucket of Blood.
Bucket of Blood, yeah, that's one of my co-bloggers' favorite films because he's an artist. But I was thinking of that when I was watching Beat Generation, and the whole scenario inside the cafes. How old are you guys? I don't. I'm 61. I'm just wondering.
I just turned 40, born in '84.
See, this is happening more and more to me. How old are you?
You
don't
don't
want
want
54 years old.
to. Okay.
Okay, I sometimes feel bad that I missed the 50s and most of the 60s. I was born in 63.
But,
It's kind of fun to watch those movies like that. Now, I wanted to ask Kevin. I want to throw back to you, and we'll go back to Vampire. But I want to ask you, what personally, Kevin Walters this time, what is your favorite Ed Wood film?
Well, yeah, if you held a gun to my head, it'd be Glenn or Glenda.
Glenda?
I think because my Ed Wood obsession and inspiration kind of draws a bit from my John Waters-ism that I'm obsessed with, because I see the similarities and ties between what is a famous John Waters quote where he says, "I was worse than Ed Wood," but kind of the ties between John and Ed with their cult kind of make your own kind of damn movie. Well, that's a Tromaism, but the underground type cinema, and also the people that surrounded them. Like John Waters had Divine and David Lockery and all these Mink Stoll and all these characters, and Ed Wood had Vampira and Tor and Bela Lugosi, so I think that's where I draw my big inspiration from, and Glenn or Glenda being so trying to think of the word, but it's really out there.
I'm a big John Waters fan too. It's funny. I went to Brigham Young University. Okay, all right. So you're gonna think he's super religious. But anyways, so I had a date one time, and I took her to see Hairspray. Okay, and she loved the movie, and she said afterwards, "We've got to see another John Waters film." I thought to myself, well, I can show you some, but our relationship will be over.
so, but Waters. What? Go on.
Oh, I was just gonna kind of jokingly say, I know you said BYU, and you talk about football or college football a lot, and I unfortunately went to Fresno State. That's where I'm an alumni. But
well, you beat us a few times in football. You did,
I was gonna just rant a little bit, because when I think about college football now, it ties me to Paul Apel's book and research, and then for some reason I always think about Ed Wood Jr. and his death that's surrounded too about football. If that makes sense, I guess.
No, well, what amazes me about Apel's book is that it was written by a guy who I think had zero interest in college football.
Right.
Okay, don't you think so, both of you? But because the football seems to be an afterthought in this book, in the screenplay. When I read it, I don't know. It would have been fun to see something happen, but at least we found it, right?
I think also what I draw and like from it too is Ed Wood was so prolific. Because like you guys, I grew up to his movies and such, but I've been getting more into his books, and he wrote so much.
Oh, I know. I buy them every time they come out.
Yeah, so when I was talking to Mr. U Bowl, sorry if I butcher his name. I hope he doesn't box me over it.
I'm a former boxer. I thought about that when I was watching, but go on.
Oh, but darn it.
Wait, Ubel, you're thinking about something at the time, and if you lost your train of thought, it's okay. It's okay.
I feel bad having dead air train.
Let me go. I want to ask Kevin and Sean one thing. Kevin Michaels, what is your favorite Ed Wood film?
This is going to probably surprise you. I wonder if Kevin Walter can guess this, but it's actually Jailbait.
Jailbait. Okay. That's the one that gets ignored in Ed Wood, which I think is unfair.
Yeah, I know. Because it almost seems like it's a real movie.
Well, it was made by people who could put them out. What was the name of that company again? they made Mesa of Lost Women. Howco, was it? No, it wasn't Howco. Or maybe it was Howco, I think. Joy Hook was involved or something.
Right.
You can tell I've read Nightmare of Ecstasy a million times, all right?
Right.
The
But,
music used to drive me crazy. Now I don't mind it at all, but go on.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it hangs together really well. It's not trying to be, let's just say, a parody of itself. It seems like that's what I think. See, that's my belief that Ed Wood was trying to make serious movies. And that's why it's kind of a thing to laugh at him still. But a lot of these things you can see are actually serious attempts to tell a story, to put something together that people hadn't seen before, those sorts of things. And probably people laugh at me for saying that.
No, I think go on.
Yeah, Kevin, you reminded me what I was going to mention about Mr. Bull is I brought up, because he's a German director, his last name's Fassbinder.
Yeah, Fassbender. Is that Fassbender?
Yeah, and he made a lot of films and arts like really, really fast, and then he died like really, really young. And so I just was talking to Mr. Bull about kind of how like that relates to, I feel like, with Ed Woodisms, because like in the Burton picture, isn't there a scene he talks about Orson Welles made Citizen Kane by such and such age, and then Ed Wood's like, I'm already over the hill.
Yeah, I think
Right.
I remember you talking about the Fassbender. I saw one of his films recently because TCM. I can't live without TCM. Okay, it was called something like Fear, Twist the Soul or something. A pretentious title, but it was about an interracial relationship in Europe in the 1970s. And he is an interesting filmmaker. And you were going back to John Waters. John Waters was very disciplined. Even when he was making Multiple Maniacs or something, I was reading books about him where they had to rehearse very, very often, get it all down to a point. So when you see the film, you think it might be scattershot, gonzo, you know, but he was very disciplined. And I remember Bob was telling me that Ed was insistent mainly on people making their marks, all right? But Ed didn't have the time or money to go a little beyond that. I'm just wondering if you guys have any comments on that.
Yeah, to Kevin's point, I agree that he was really convinced, and I'm kind of verbatim taking what I learned from the interviewing and talking with Bob Creamer, is that Ed Wood truly believed that he was the kindred spirit to Orson Welles, and that he was making an alternative type of cinema. And so, like, to Kevin's point, that he really believed he was making like high, great art. And so with your point about like John Waters, you know, even though this might be underground trash cinema, this is still to be taken very serious. And also too, I like, if you go through Plan 9, there's a lot of talented people that worked on that film too around Ed Wood. So it's almost like he was very good at collaborating people together. Maybe if he was like lacking something, I'm not trying to say that, but you know, he was, if that makes sense.
No, I know what you're saying. It seems to me like Kevin Michaels, you can also chime in on this. The 50s was pretty unforgiving to people if they had some kind of issue. Like Wood apparently had some money problems with what's that guy's name, Arkin or somebody? Arkoff is his name. The guy who started American International.
Right.
Samuel Arkoff, right?
Samuel Arkoff, yeah.
And
Z.
Bob-
Arkoff.
Z. Arkoff, yeah. And Bob Blackburn was telling me that basically the guy never forgot it. So Ed didn't have that chance to move up. And he said that, he told me that, this may have been Angel Scott that told me that making the Baptist one was something that he wanted to do, and he got all that money, but they had no idea how to distribute Plan 9 from Outer Space. And it's got to be tough if you don't have allies in the industry. He had people that would work for him, but they don't appear to be people that had a lot of power in the industry. Like old actors, you know, when I get on this, when I do these podcasts, my brain goes fuzzy. Lyle Talbot was, Lyle Talbot's a well-known actor, but I don't know how much power he had in Hollywood and things like that. And I'm just wondering if you guys want to think this: did Ed Wood lose some of the enthusiasm? Did some of that change into despair as we got into the '60s and late
Yeah,
'50s?
he won the war, but he lost the battle. Let's just put it that way. Yeah,
Yeah, and
that sort of thing. But it reminds me of the grindhouse movies of the '70s, if you want to use that term. If you want to expand on that, the Jack Hills of the world.
the Andy
And then
Milligan.
you have all this homage. Quentin Tarantino comes out in the '90s, all this homage, and eventually makes Grindhouse in 2007. And then you have somebody taking $30 million trying to duplicate what Jack Hill was doing for under $1 million in the early '70s.
That's a good
So
point.
it makes you wonder about what's really a limitation. Is it money that's a limitation, or is it time, or is it, because like you said, it's unforgiving. That's what it is. But pretty much every decade for filmmaking was unforgiving, if you think about it.
Well, they just couldn't get any money out of it. Even the guy the Baptist, what was his name? J. Edwards Reynolds, reading a recent book, I think it was by Angel Scott also, it killed him. He died literally after he finally got the deal. And the deal was from Distributing Corporation of America, and then he gave him a little bit of money, and then it went bust, and so it just went into limbo. I don't think Ed Wood saw any money from this. Do you think he did? Plan 9 from Outer Space?
I would say probably not. I would think it ruined him.
Yeah,
Because it took years of time to try to get some return on investment.
I think of Ed Wood, and I think someone needs to make a movie of the last 17, 18 years of his career in Hollywood. I'm going to ask you both this question. Do you think he was aware before he died that there was a cult? Because I know Glinda was playing in New York when he was still alive. I don't know if Plan 9 playing on every monster channel would constitute a cult at that time. What do you guys think? Think he was aware that there were people that considered him some of a cult director before he died?
It's an interesting question whether he was aware. I think he would have been more aware had he been making money with his films.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have had so many shenanigans, and you probably wouldn't have had Orgy of the Dead if that had been something he knew about.
Yeah, because he died in '78, and
78.
When did the Golden Turkey come out?
The Golden Turkeys came out later, but I do know like Frank Henenlotter was talking with Rudolph Gray, and they'd mentioned about seeing Glinda in the mid-'70s in New York on late at night. Now, Glinda was supposed to get a big release on Paramount, but that was probably a hoax, I think, in 1980. It's probably a useless question, but I was just wondering if Wood had any idea of what he might have done, having some kind of impact, because it's really tragic.
I do ponder it because, especially with today's digital age, where there's Kickstarters and Indiegogos, and I kind of, talking to Bob Creamer, got that Ed was almost doing that in his form in his day and age, where he would try to get something in the can with the stars, and then go out and be like, have a luncheon with the stars, and then take that money and then use it to finance more of the film. So really ahead of his day and age with stuff like that.
Well, it can be a cruel world, I guess, for the poor guy at the end of his life. And I wanted to go back to Vampira for a second, if you don't mind. I remember reading somewhere where the Ed Wood producers couldn't find her to give her money because she was sort of reclusive at the time. Does that ring a bell or anything?
Right. You're talking about the Tim Burton film, right?
Yeah, Tim Burton film.
That was the case. They also told her that they can do whatever they want. They don't have to pay her anything. And they told Conrad Brooks the same thing. They told everybody the same thing. So that's not too good when you're in a film. I mean, you can see that happens all the time with these kind of biopics, that they change the name of somebody because they don't want to pay them, or they just tell them it's just too bad. But what mostly offended her was Lisa Marie never came to see her, or so she says, that she wasn't part of that process. I guess she would have liked to have spent time.
Yeah,
But the other side of this story is she wasn't available, so I don't know.
she seemed to be a little bit reclusive later in life. All right, was she harassed by people in the 60s or 70s that might have caused that?
Oh, sure, absolutely. She had many different jobs, wore many different hats. She had an antique store one time. She made jewelry. She did a lot to stay afloat, as most people do. But even she didn't know what, you could apply the same question you had about Ed Wood, whether she knew she was a cult figure.
She must have known by the end,
until,
though, don't you think?
Yeah, until that whole Elvira thing bubbled up.
Yeah.
Probably didn't know.
How big of an influence on her life were the Misfits coming into her life?
Very helpful.
Yeah.
Very, very helpful. And her showing up to that in-store. Well, there's now a lot of really good photos have surfaced. When I was looking for photos 20 years ago, I couldn't find anything. It was just a blurry thing from a newspaper. But very helpful because that was when they started showing it on TV, as you were saying, when it sort of went into some syndication.
Did you guys see the new Revenge of the Dead titled Blu-ray that came out recently? Just wondering. It came out from Canada.
Yeah, I'm a little behind on buying those, but I have seen it out there, and really
I bought it, but it's now been taken off the market. Thanks to what's his name. What the guy he's dead, and his estate's still trying to steal everything. I can't remember. Wade Williams, and I'm not saying Wade Williams is a bad guy on this podcast. I'm just saying that they stopped sales of the thing. All right. But what interests me is that was found in a Canada place, which makes me think the film probably popped up a lot more than we think before it came out of the lab. I don't know if you guys have any comments on that.
Yeah, Wade Williams, that's a bit of controversy for sure. I think we've talked about that. Yeah, you and I, Kevin.
Haven't you interacted with him?
No,
I
I basically interacted with nobody until I started the podcast, other than
I'm sorry, Mr. Michael's here.
I'm sorry.
As a Wade story.
Oh yes, yeah. When I was there was a company called Legend Films that was trying to put out a colorized version and eventually did.
I own
Plan
it.
9. And Wade Williams had claimed that he had rights to just about every single print in the world.
Well, it
And they
gets
said,
really.
well, if they transfer it, it's probably public domain.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to tell you something. When I try to do podcasts on movies, they can be 100 years old, and somebody pops up on YouTube saying, "We're going to contest this." It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's why also to Kevin's point about, when they're making biopics, they'll just kind of say like, "Too bad, we're changing it," and things like that. That's why, sorry, Bob Blackburn, I haven't finished your book yet, but I will definitely get you a review ASAP because, bless his heart for his relationship and what he did with Kathy Wood, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what, also in this Ed Wood world is you can see who's really, really like genuine. And I feel like that stems from really beloving his films and who this guy was, and I guess that in a nutshell that's also like kind of behind the project Kevin and I are doing, per se.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that. When do you guys think you'll have it done?
Well, future events such as these will happen.
Well, we're looking forward to
I'm
it.
hoping this year. Really am.
Okay, tell me a little bit. We'll go back to Ed Wood, but tell us, both of us, you can take turns. What's it like working for Troma, being involved with them? When I was in my 20s, I watched all the Toxic Avenger films, okay? I remember going to the video store and grabbing those, and I probably watched 4 or 5 other ones. Was Waitress a Troma film? I don't
Yes.
know. Okay, so I saw that one too and some more. But tell us some of your experiences.
Well, I'll let Mr. Kevin Michaels tell his first because his is way more traditional than from my perspective. But take it away, Kevin. I feel like.
Well, I actually worked in the office, so I don't know if it's art imitating life or life imitating art, but it's sort of the, I guess the atmosphere that Andy Warhol was trying, you know, where people come in and it's a place where people can create. But there was no actual studio. People thought maybe in the back we were making films, but there was no actual studio. It was a very, very traditional office and very, very businesslike in one sense. And then in the other sense, because of the, you know, the content, you know, things could get a little out of hand. So that's always a kind of a funny thing to try to balance those things. And I think, you know, also very Mad Magazine in its way too. So working for Lloyd, but you know, I tell people there was things that probably happened in that office, you know, back in those days that probably can't happen in an office today.
what
You
were
can
the
fill in the blanks.
well, what were the negotiations to get a film to be purchased by Troma or something like that? I mean, just did they vary? Because I think Troma purchased a lot of films, right? That had already been made. Did they
Oh,
come
for sure.
in and you watched movies and said, we don't like this one or we like this one, we're going to negotiate for it and things like that?
Yeah, and they acquired some old film libraries. That was always a thing to do at one time, and they bought a lot from Sam Sherman. And you know, here and there, they sort of piecemealed a whole library together, and plus a lot of acquisition over the years, which is how they found Cannibal. I mean, that's probably was the find of the millennium. To
Definitely.
find Cannibal, but that was because, you know, going to Sundance, right? And seeing who's failing, not who's succeeding, but who's failing.
That's interesting. We might use that as a blurb. Okay.
I mean, Lloyd literally saw that they were doing their own film festival just based on Cannibal, just running Cannibal. So that was Trey and Matt doing their own thing. You gotta admire that moxie.
No, definitely. Kevin Walters? What do you
Well, yeah, so mine's more of a, you know, fan perspective growing up with it. And I would say I really relate to like the Harvey P. Car aspect of it, where basically I have a government dead end 9-to-5 job.
You're talking to
and
me right now. Go on.
And I was in my 30s, bored in life, and I started to look back to the films I grew up to, which was, you know, Troma, John Waters, and underground type cinema. And in this day and age, you know, if you have a cell phone, you know, you can kind of basically make a movie. You know, it's kind of been done. And so in about like 2015 or so, I started reaching out to Troma. And this is in the time when John Brennan, who, you know, who now was running Joe Bob Briggs, you know, Justin Martell. These guys were in the office, Doug Sackman. These guys were in the office, and I reached out to them, and they kind of helped me fulfill my Troma dream of making a film. But I didn't do it in like a traditional sense where, you know, I did film some in person here in Fresno, but I didn't do it in a traditional sense where, kind of like Kevin said, you know, you think there's a studio behind us, but really it's just like an office. And it's the make your own damn movie way. And I think that's also why I kind of relate to Ed Wood Jr. as well, with the just wanting to make a movie in cinema and alternative style. And so I started doing that around 2015, trying to make my own Troma film. And here I am today, still kind of just doing that in what I feel like is like I said, kind of like a Harvey P. Car style, where I still have my 9-to-5, and then outside of that, I guess make this ridiculous art.
Well, you made Tower Rats. Tell us about that.
Well, Tower Rats originally started kind of like at the beginning of my rant here, where I wanted to make some type of John Waters type film, but how he loves Baltimore, I love Fresno. Fresno's kind of like the Baltimore of the West Coast. And so Tower Rats, the name actually derives from the Tower District here in Fresno. Is kind of like our little Castro district of San Francisco. It's our little, artistic area, LGBTQ friendly, and art and things like that. But the Tower Rats that I grew up to in the Tower District, they were your kind of like gutter punk, homeless, I guess punk rock skater kids, and that's originally where the inspiration derived from. But kind of drawing from the Troma inspiration of the Kabuki Man car flip that they recycle over and over. I made this film that kind of like has no plot, and I think that was the kind of the inspiration of it, because there's things that like Kevin worked on. Is the original title was Tromaville Cafe, which was recycled into like Troma's Edge TV.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so Tower Rats is kind of like a very fast-paced, a Troma style. What's that darn show? It's on Adult Swim. Has the chicken title in it.
Robot Chicken?
Yeah. I would say it's along those kind of lines, where it's so it wants to have a narrative, but it really doesn't, and it all revolves around what's exploding out of my head probably at the time as I edited it.
Well, I'm going to look for that movie and watch it. Okay. Very soon.
I'll send you a copy.
Okay.
Honestly, I can.
That's very kind of you.
Yeah.
What? Also going to watch Ted Michaels doc this weekend. I have it. I just didn't get time to watch it before today. You guys remember those video books, or there were books that would have movies with one paragraph reviews, right? And there was one called Movies on TV and Video or something guide, and the reason I got addicted to a lot of this cult stuff is when I saw a John Waters movie, and that guide would have 0 stars, but the titles were so cool. And then I'd see Andy Milligan with some really cool titles and 0 stars. I said, I gotta see those movies. And they turned out to be great movies, which I love now. Whether it's Torture Dungeon.
How could you not watch a movie called The Werewolves of Coming?
Yes, and the rats too. Okay.
And the rats.
Yeah, and so my point here
These things are all coming at you.
is you talked about looking for failures, but also I think when we've watched cult films, we're looking for critical failures from people like Bosley Crowther from the New York Times. I don't know if you guys remember that name, but he was this stuck-up New York Times movie journalist who hated every decent movie ever made in the 40s and 50s from Universal Horrors. So we're looking for films that, if they hate it, we know we'll like it.
Oh yeah, that used to be my Bible, the Video Hound.
Yeah, Video Hound.
And then Leonard Maltin also had one that was like where he sort of recycled, and it's the same book. I buy it every year, but it was essentially the same book.
Yeah, the last time I bought that book, I bought it on Kindle. It was the last edition that came out. That's how time goes, But I used to have those books. Stephen Schurer made them too, and the ones that had the zeros for Waters and Milligan were from another couple of people that did it for about 8 or 9 years also. But it was fun going back to Pickwick. There's no longer a B. Dalton Pickwick, right? And it was fun in the late 70s and 80s finding the movie adaptation, the book. It really wasn't a novel. It was something hacked out from a movie like Halloween or something like that. Just reading those, or I even found one for a Herschel Gordon Lewis movie, something to do with hillbilly something, I can't remember. But those days are gone, it seems like, doesn't it? But what's replacing it now is online stuff. The Ed Wood Jr. Facebook page, the blogs and stuff like that are out and things like that. And Keith Crocker is going on the East Coast and having these retrospectives of films and things like that. And I think that the film you both are trying to make right now is going to really add to that. And that's the way you get things out now, right?
To your point too, bless Joe Blevins for his blog and all his research and stuff.
I can't believe how good that blog is. I mean, there were Ed Wood web pages, and they were fun to read, but nothing compared to what he does on that.
Yeah, kind of to that point, Kevin and I kind of discussed this, that there's many like layers to the Ed Wood Jr. fandom. You know, there's ones who, you know, only like maybe the campy B. Wood sci-fi Ed. There's those who, heaven forbid, only like the later porno Ed Wood. There's those who only like the early, you know, Angora Ed Wood.
Now, is that Angora? Does that Angora have a history, or you just found an Angora sweater?
Well, this is one I bought, but
okay.
I guess we'll bring it up is when I conned Kevin Michaels into going and hanging out with Bob Blackburn. Tell us about that, Kevin.
Oh, that was I was in Bob Blackburn's inner sanctum, and he just brought this bag out and pulled that sweater out, and of course, you know, I didn't even want to touch it.
Because he showed me that when I interviewed him, the sweater.
I mean, I wanted to put it on and walk down Hollywood Boulevard, but he said I was going to stretch the neck out, so.
Hey, Ed Wood got away with it in the 50s. It'd be much easier today, wouldn't it?
But yeah, Kevin went out and filmed with Bob, and they went out to some old haunts. And tell us, Kevin, what was it like? Didn't you guys go by the Ed Wood's liquor store and all his old kind of like apartment areas?
Oh yeah, it was almost like a bar crawl, except that Bob didn't treat.
Was that called Playboy Liquor? Am I correct on that?
Yeah,
Playboy Liquors.
Yeah. You know, I read in the book that he used to go there and get robbed after leaving. That's so sad, things like that. Of course, sometimes you wonder if everything they're saying is 100% accurate, you know, because we know he didn't get his teeth knocked out fighting in Japan in high combat in World War II. But I almost think that's part of the appeal when people try to, I mean, you probably have 15 different ages for Valda Hansen as she was going through and doing interviews, you know, and I used to think she was 15 years old in Night of the Ghouls, and she was really pretty close to 30 at the time. It's just
a lot of stuff came out of Larry Karaszewski's imagination and Scott Alexander's imagination.
So what are your guys' favorite literature from Ed Wood? Book or short story? Any idea? Any offers? Suggestions?
Kevin.
Go ahead, Kevin. I have The Death of the Transvestite. Like I said, I'm kind of behind on all the Ed Wood literature, but what I draw from it is like, wow, this guy was just got a lot of shit done.
That's what amazes me. He could write so prolifically.
Right.
Yeah. What do you like? Some of his writing. Oh, you told me Death of a Transvestite, right? Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin Sean.
Go ahead, Mr. Michaels.
Yeah, I concur. I concur with that. I think that's more an explanation than anything else of what he was trying to get at in Glen and Glenda.
It's the first one I read. I like Hollywood Rat Race a lot, though, too. And I think that's a book that he could have sold on the regular market. But, you know, I don't know what his situation was and everything, because it's pretty interesting. And, of course, I ask everybody this, although, well, I asked two people who might know, and they were pretty pessimistic. But is the book Lugosi Postmortem ever going to be found, you know? You think it's out there somewhere, or just gone forever? Who knows, right? It'd just be so fascinating to find it.
Fingers crossed.
Well, some people think that Bela Lugosi Jr. has it, but I don't know why he'd keep it secret if he did. Um, I wanted to mention, I personally like a short story called To Kill a Saturday Night. If you guys haven't read that, give it a shot. It's pretty good. It would have been a great 30-minute. Frankly, it would have been a great Twilight Zone or something. It's about two drunks who don't know what to do, and anyways, all those.
Oh, I want to bring up.
Yeah.
I keep trying to remember the list of people I've talked to, and it also kind of derives from the Ed Wood Summit podcast that. Which also has a lot of incredible information too. But I've been chatting with Mike Hickey, who's a comedian based out of LA, and also Jason Insulaco, who's the
guy that found the movie, right?
Yeah, he's the great grand
nephew or something of
to,
Paul.
I feel
Paul
so
Marco.
bad.
Paul Marco.
Yeah, thank you, Paul Marco. Yeah. Kevin has some, I think, good stories about Dolores Fuller and Conrad Brooks.
Good. You get those out. You get those out. You're going to have a lot of new stuff for people. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Believe me, I suck up
some for the documentary.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
any minutia you can find. I will eagerly consume. Okay. I'm just hooked on Ed Wood. And what do you think his favorite? What do you think his best late movie is? Before we get going off here, it can be a dangerous question.
I think you're gonna laugh when I mention Necromania.
Necromania. Okay, I'm laughing.
Two versions of it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, there was that one that came out from Something Weird finally, and then they eventually found. This is what they found, the full film, right? But it didn't seem to have a very long release.
That was a good joke.
Well, I did
Very
think,
good, Doug.
Yeah, I do think I found Necromania one time. I haven't watched it, but I think it's on the Internet Archive now. You know that? Now,
Yeah. Well, again, it's the same thing. You know what I mean? It's like Ed was still exploring. You know, to think about what he could have done in porno. We'll never know.
The problem I think he was drunk a lot making those later movies. All right, and it might have hurt the quality a little bit. Jason Walter, Michael Walter. I'm sorry. Okay, you got me thinking about Jason Insulaco. Okay, what is your favorite late Ed Wood movie?
Well, I'm gonna go a little off the wall there and say my favorite post-mortem one is I awoke the day I woke up early the day I died. That's an instant cult classic, and I wish what's the gentleman's name? Aries?
Yeah. What's going on with the legal battle there? I don't understand, but maybe nobody does.
No, I don't either. But it just what a great title and what a great homage to Ed Wood and a script like that. I jokingly think like I took a shot of Imperial whiskey and I woke up a cult film director.
Yeah, I've seen that movie. Someone sent me a download of it several years ago, and it's really, really good. It is really, really good. But I'll tell you, my favorite, if I have to pick one, because most of them I don't like, I like Take It Out and Trade. I think it has some of the Ed Wood spirit in it, okay? And the funny thing is, when I bought it, it came with a movie that made me want to take a shower afterwards. I've only watched it once. The photographer, I think,
It's a good point because, like, I've kind of gotten out there from research and talking, and on this project that it is a bit controversial in like Ed Wood fandom because people think he's so down and out with the scene where he's got the dog collar and things like that, and
I just felt sorry for him. But I did like Take It Out and Trade. I thought it was obviously it wasn't a great film, but it looked like it had some spirit to it. All right, like he was having fun, and it was fun to see Duke Moore in it too, and everything.
Yeah, that's kind of what I got too from if if I just tried to picture myself trying to know who Ed Wood was, it seemed like he really loved the whole, like, let's go make a movie aspect, like all that other stuff, that's why I think he was probably really good at pulling together talent. But also he was very prolific as a writer, knocking out books and scripts and things like that. And also probably to maybe feed the addiction as well, to get paid and go to Playboy Liquor and spend it. Unfortunately, I know I shouldn't laugh, but
No, it's well, but it's an interesting life.
yeah.
The thing about Colt is you can't replicate it, and that's what makes him so unique. You can say this is not a good movie, but then try to replicate it. If someone tries to, I mean, no offense, but when they made Plan 9 several years ago, it just wasn't the same. Okay, you can't replicate Ed Wood. You can't replicate an Andy Milligan. You can't replicate John Waters, and that's what makes Colt. And it's just pretty cool. I think we're running out of time, so I want to give you guys a last chance to talk about the film project, okay? And if you have anything more you'd like to say, let me know, okay, right now. Does Kevin, Shawn Michaels want to go first?
Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you for having us on. First of all, Doug, thanks very much. And I thought that was a great definition of what cult films are. Because, go out and make a movie, you can't do it. Ed Wood got shit done, we know that. That's, like you said, he was prolific. We're still enjoying his work to this day. People throw around the term guilty pleasure a lot, or cult film, or B-movie, or whatever they want to say, but we're still talking about it, we're still enjoying it. So, how could something be the worst film ever made? Well, probably has yet to be made, the worst film ever made. And so, I just always think about what's the future. We can look back, and even though everybody has an iPhone in their pocket, it's still hard to make a movie. At the end of the day, it's hard to get actors. It's hard to write a script. It's not getting any easier, even with AI. And I like to think that people are still using their noodle and going to be creative, especially coming into the times that we have, because these are some absurd times, and this is definitely mirroring.
I wonder
the 50s and.
I wonder if I'll live
60s
long
have
enough to
changed.
see movies made about the 2025. But anyways, now Kevin Walters, tell him do you have anything to add to this podcast right now?
Well, yeah, to add to Kevin's point about the definition of cult filmmaking, and when I think of Ed Wood Jr., yeah, I grew up to like the Mystery Science Theaters and it being on there, but now, in retrospect, I'm like offended, like, oh, you can make fun of anyone else, but don't make fun of Ed Wood Jr. He's different. He's an artiste.
Didn't Penn and Teller said something? They said, he said something like, I've seen Plan 9 from Outer Space 15 times. Can you say that about an Emma Thompson movie? And I'll add that. I've seen Revenge of Dr. X 15 times. And I haven't seen an Emma Thompson movie 15 times, just because the syntax of Ed Wood is so wonderful. They're going to make me end this now in a few minutes. They say I have 3 minutes. So I wanted to say thank you both very much. This is Plan 9 Crunch. I have to go through this spiel, okay? Plan 9 Crunch at YouTube. Subscribe, please. It's free. And Plan 9 Crunch podcast and blog at Facebook. You can just like it. And we're also on TikTok. And we're also at a blog called plan9crunch.com. And Steve Stones and I, and my son now, he's been writing a lot of stuff. We have more than 1,000 blog posts, many of the movies we discussed, reviews. And so thank you again. Maybe we'll get back and talk once the movie comes out again. And that's a wrap.